You know, a lot of different things have been said about game subscription services in the past. Stuff like Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Nintendo Switch Online. You know, some people really like it, some people are really opposed to it. But that's just talking about the service as, a service, like how consumers think of it. Not really how does it work for developers? How does it work actually as something that is sustainable in the long run? Now, different things I'm sure have been said about this too, but this is actually coming from the actual director of a studio, or actually more accurately, this is the studio founder, not the current director. He actually left a little while ago, but anyway, this is Arkane Studios. They make the Dishonored games. They also made Redfall, Prey, Deathloop, a few others. I should probably specify this guy was not a part of the studio when Redfall came out. I know that game was a disaster. So anyway, this is Rafael Colantonio. So he recently took to X to talk about things specifically regarding this topic. So he started off by saying, why is no one talking about the elephant in the room? And he hinted that obviously this was Game Pass that he was referring to. So this conversation started yesterday, and so a lot of people kind of commented on this, like what exactly was he talking about with Game Pass? And he shared some thoughts, and it was very interesting because obviously he has some experience being the studio head of Arkane, and now it looks like he's the studio head of a different studio. So his thoughts on Game Pass are quite a bit negative. He does not think that it actually works in the long run. So he says, I think Game Pass is an unsustainable model that has been increasingly damaging the industry for a decade, subsidized by Microsoft's quote-unquote infinite money, but at some point really has to hit. I don't think Game Pass can coexist with other models. They will either kill everyone else or give up. So yeah, a lot of stuff here, mainly the infinite money thing I thought was interesting. I have heard this claim before, like Microsoft has infinite money that they can throw at Game Pass because Microsoft is one of the richest companies in the world, but he's claiming that no, this isn't going to be the case in the long run. Eventually this is going to run out. You know, Game Pass eventually has to profit at some point, and he doesn't seem to think it's doing that right now, and he says that Game Pass really cannot coexist with other subscription models. It's either going to kill everything else off and become a monopoly, or they will just give up on it. He did also make the point that maybe not just Xbox, but subscription services in general claim that subscription services are not going to take sales from the game, which I think is kind of funny because as he said, I mean, yeah, obviously it is going to take sales from these games. Now, obviously with something like subscription services, you have to focus maybe less on how many sales your game is getting and more on, how much are we profiting from this game overall, both from the sales and from just the flat money that we're getting from being on Game Pass. Now, one person did claim, and I've always kind of felt this way too, that maybe Xbox is playing kind of the long game here, that in the short run it's not profitable to do this, but maybe in the long run it will be. So Raphael says that yeah, he kind of agrees, but this is a long game that involves throwing a tsunami at the entire ecosystem of the industry. Only the gamers like it because the offer is too good to be true, and yes, that is true, but eventually even gamers will hate it when they realize the effects on the games. Now, I have heard this from some others as well on Reddit, and even just some comments on some of my other videos. People do say this, that the effects are going to be catastrophic in the long run on us consumers in the gaming community. So, I guess we will see if that does happen. I'm sure the main claim is that these subscription services are just going to be way too expensive in the long run overall to afford multiple of them. I mean, we're obviously seeing that already with streaming services. Nobody wants to have like 5 or 6 of those because that's going to break the bank. One last thing too is that Raphael does say that he's sure that Game Pass has been good for some people, but that when you look at the net results, it has not been good. And this is something I've also seen claimed, that something like Game Pass or any model like this is going to be good for the AAA companies and maybe even the super small indie devs. But as for the people in between, it's going to be a lot harder to keep up with, especially if you don't have a live service game. If you have a single player game that you've spent quite a bit of time and money making, the effects are not going to work. And that could be true, but this whole claim that overall it's not even going to work for Xbox and Microsoft and really anybody else that has this service is really something. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not. At the end of the day, we will have to wait and see. But if it really becomes a thing, like Raphael was saying, where only one subscription-based service survives among all of them, you would think that at that point, maybe some argument could be made of a monopoly, and then, the governments in multiple countries could step in and try to stop it. That's thinking way far ahead, though, but at the same time, I don't know how far ahead this long-run game would be for Microsoft. Overall, though, yeah, we do have a studio head here that is claiming that Game Pass Pass as a service for Xbox and even for game devs, it's not going to work out in the long run. That's the claim. I don't know if it is true. That is just something that we will have to wait and see.